United States warplanes have carried out an airstrike in Syria. A pair of F-16s struck targets in the country just hours ago in retaliation for attacks on U.S. troops in the region that injured 21 service members. A senior U.S. defense official says Israel was not informed ahead of carrying out the airstrikes against IRGC facilities. Let's turn now to Steve Rogers, retired lieutenant detective for the Nutley, New Jersey Police Department. He's also a former member of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, as well as a retired U.S. Naval officer. Steve, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for being up late for us. Let's go right to these strikes. This is not the first time President Biden has struck Syria. He did it last year. He did it in 2021. It's used as a deterrent. Will this work? Was this strike, in your view, proportional?
Well, the strike was proportional, but I don't believe it will be a deterrent. And there's been a lot of focus on Syria, on the Mideast. But there is another element to this that we need to think about and talk about, and that's our homeland right here in the United States. I believe that Iran, who has their fingerprints all over this, has been preparing this for a long time. Our southern border has been open for a few years, and there's no question in my mind, based on my experience in working at the National Joint Terrorism Task Force years ago, that a good number of terrorists have crossed that border. There's a lot of planning that's been done with Iran with regard to coordinated attacks. Now they're bold enough, believing that we're so weak after Afghanistan, that they're at liberty to do what they may with the United States of America. So I don't believe it's much of a deterrent at this point in time.
Steve, you really opened up a can of worms here I want to ask you about, because obviously you've seen, I've covered the border quite a lot. I was just spent 10 days down on the border, and the time I was in Eagle Pass, 6 Iranians had crossed the border along with 3 Lebanese, a Syrian man. But what's significant is that when these special interest aliens come into the custody of Border Patrol, they're turned over to ICE, and then ultimately it is the Joint Terrorism Task Force that does the background checks to determine whether or not they're on the terror screening data set, terror watch list, if you will. And so if you sort of connect some dots here, you're saying tonight, or early this morning, I should say, that you're concerned that as we see Iran through their proxies escalating towards the U.S., that there could possibly be a threat crossing the border, or may already be here amongst the hundreds of thousands that have crossed our border.
Look, I believe they're here. There are thousands of across that border that we cannot find, that, by the way, compliments of the U.S. government were transported to cities all over this country. They're unaccounted for. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. I remember one of our first concerns back after 9/11, working with military intelligence and the FBI, was the border back then. And one of our concerns was, who's going to cross that border with a high-powered weapon? And we're talking about, and we were worried about a suitcase bomb, things like that. Now, of course, I would hope to God that they never had the opportunity to bring something like that across the border. At least somebody, I hope, was checking. But the fact of the matter is, the whole planet knows that that border was very, very open. Anybody could cross from there. And as you just stated, even recently, the ICE has arrested Iranians. They've detained people from Iraq, all areas of the Mideast. And one common denominator with most of these people, young men. Think about that one.
Yeah. That's exactly right, Steve. And I can tell you border officials are very concerned about the threat you're talking about. Let me just quickly, before we run out of time, take you back to put your naval hat on. And as we talk about or hear about the escalation ladder, in other words, when Iran's proxies strike the U.S., we escalate proportionally. And the red line seems to be, and always has been recently, the death of U.S. citizens. And when we look at what may come next, and as Lucas Tomlinson has done great reporting, the president will have a menu of options for any additional strikes. And of course, it's worth pointing out that Defense Secretary Austin says we do not seek conflict and has no intention to engage in further hostilities. But do you predict that things will continue, or is this going to be it for a while?
Well, things are going to get worse in my view. Look, we're dealing with irrational people in Iran. They're hell-bent on destroying Israel and the United States, and they believe that they're going to have no other opportunity than now because of this perception of weakness. Well, they're going to find out about the firepower of the United States Navy. I believe that. I believe the red line has already been drawn, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when that happens, they will get the full weight of the U.S. military, especially if an American dies as a result of one of those missile strikes or rocket attacks on one of our American bases. They're going to have hell to pay. And that's the message that I believe the White House sent them right now. It was a message. I agree with that. But if you go beyond what you were told already, you're going to pay a heavy price.
You are right. That is indeed the message. We will see if Iran heeds it. Steve Rogers, thank you for getting up early for us this morning.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for the good work you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Meanwhile,